Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by onlinegreatbooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. Well, I'm Scott Hambrick, and today I have John Syc with me. He's an Online Great Books member, and he and I had a phone conversation about our program at Online Great Books, and we went down an interesting, conversational rabbit hole about authenticity in speech and how that can affect the seminar experience and be an obstacle to people learning and obstacle to introspection. And we decided that we should do a podcast about that. So, John, who the heck are you, and why are you qualified to speak about this?
Well, I appreciate you giving me the forum, and I thank you for bringing me on here. Yeah, it was an interesting conversation that we had that sort of developed out of nowhere, because I think in the beginning it started off with what my experience in Online Great Books was, and we, as you say, we went down this rabbit hole as we started talking about seminars. But my name is John Syc. I'm actually by title, a licensed clinical social worker in Hamden, Connecticut. And but what I really do is I do individual therapy and work primarily with men's issues. Just through my own experiences, let's say my own father, even just the emotional disconnect that men sometimes have and keeps them from having meaningful relationships. And through my own journey, I turned it into my passion. So I have a private practice where I primarily focus on men's issues. But, and what we're talking about with authenticity, let's say with thought and speech, is that oftentimes we have a hard time saying what we want to say and what we want to think, and for any number of reasons. But really, what I do on a daily basis is get people to access the full truth of themselves. And sometimes it's not pretty, but you know what? Once we are aware of it, we can do something with it.
So is that what authenticity is then for you? By the way, how crazy is it that your last name is Syc and that you're in this weird business?
I know. I say it was destined that I was supposed to become a therapist. It was just written in the stars for me.
What is authenticity? I think we need to go back and define that, at least for the purpose of conversation. So I'll go first. Mm-hmm. And I think it is saying the thing that you need to say in the terms of our seminar. It's saying the thing that you need to say in order to make the contents of your own mind known to the other person.
Right. And that can be so hard too, because given whatever our own experiences were, I mean, how many times have we been told growing up, oh, don't think that or don't say that? And all of a sudden we get this visceral reaction of, well, what are people going to think of me if I actually say this? But yet, when you're in the seminar, that's what needs to be said, because that's for you to work through your own thought process of what that book meant to you. But that also provides value to somebody else, because then once you allow your vulnerability of what you're thinking or what you want to say, other people suddenly get permission to do that too.
Yeah, and then they can actually connect with you on the original, real bedrock, understanding of who you are and where you're coming from. If you misrepresent where you're coming from or are evasive, they end up connecting with something that ain't you, and it's alienating.
Right, and where is it actually coming from then? And what, is it actually you speaking, or who is it? And then when you're having that kind of conversation and you're basing it off of something that isn't your own thought process, all you're doing is almost regurgitating it. It's kind of like, I think it's almost like what you're saying. It's reading the book about the book. You're probably just taking comments that you read or heard from somebody else and trying to pass it along your own, and then you can get really stuck, or you're just not being anybody can read that book about the book, but what does it mean about what you're saying?
Yeah, anybody can regurgitate what they think other people want to hear them say about the book.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just got in my home great books group. We just finished Dante's Divine Comedy, and Canticle 3 is Paradise, Paradiso.
Okay.
Uh, I hated it. It was word salad to me. It was this revelatory, mystical experience that this guy wrote down on paper, and I'm sure it was important to him, and it's important to other people.
Mm-hmm.
To me, utter rubbish. I have almost nothing positive to say about it, and that's not popular. I can see that people that came to a seminar
Mm-hmm.
and it was new to them, and the people in the group were new to them, that they would be loath to say that about what is supposedly, I'm making the scare quotes right now, a great um,
Almost like heresy.
right. But then there's the other guy. And
Yeah.
this is the inauthenticity in seminar that I'm most familiar with. I want you to maybe tell us some other kinds of inauthentic patterns that you see.
Sure.
But the one I see the most often is someone who plays the devil's advocate.
Okay. And how do you see that playing out when someone's a devil's advocate? Let's make sure I understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, it takes place in a couple of forms. Someone might just take the stance that I took here on the Dante book,
Mm-hmm.
just due to maybe some sort of a contrary nature that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that they read the book. They came into the reading experience expecting or wanting to not like the thing, and then everything they do thereafter is colored that way. And then sometimes someone comes to seminar and they just that person, that's just the role they play, and it just happens time and time again. And I
Mm-hmm.
just get a sense I'd have a sense that I don't really know what that person thinks about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I get the sense that this is how they treat material, and I don't actually get to find out what they thought of it.
who they are. And, you know, I see a few things with this. I mean, so when I think of devil's advocate, it can serve a purpose in the right form. I mean, because actually, when you play devil's advocate, it tends the research shows that it brings a group towards actually consensus, and usually consensus of what the original idea was. And so it doesn't work all that effective, but sometimes in like a team meeting, like business, when you're trying to make a decision, you need somebody in there that's just going to be the devil's advocate to make sure that people are fleshing out their ideas. But when I think of the seminars that we're going through, the purpose is not to come to towards a consensus. It has everything to do with you coming away with your own experience. And so when you're playing devil's advocate, I see a few things happening. One in particular that, what does that say about you? Are you trying to protect your own ego? That it's by giving out your own opinion, suddenly, you become responsible for those ideas. And are you trying to absolve yourself of taking responsibility for it and trying to say a lot without really saying anything? And, you know, you're robbing yourself of that experience of trying to really understand what this book means to you and what you're trying to take away from it.
I agree. And the devil's advocate role has a place. And oftentimes, as a seminar host, you might take that devil's advocate role
Yes.
uh, to keep the conversation moving. But that's a device that we would use to help people flesh out their own thoughts about the thing. Well,
Hmm.
here, John, you've said this about that. Let me take this other stance in order to help you further clarify where you are.
Right.
Uh, but if you started by playing a role, by taking on the mantle of the devil's advocate, then we really can't flesh out your understanding, because you aren't playing out your understanding. You are carrying the mantle, and that's the problem.
It, and you're not allowing yourself to have what I would almost say like meaningful relationships in the seminar. I mean, there could be, it depends on your intention of genuine curiosity. It may sound like I'm questioning you and why you, let's say, didn't like Dante's, but the particular area, the particular book of Dante. But if I'm sitting there and I have a genuine curiosity, you're going to get a much different feel and connection from that person because you're going to feel like you're trying to be understood and heard. But with the devil's advocate, it's almost like you become defensive in a way because you're trying to justify how you felt about this book. But it so robs both people of having a meaningful dialogue where, it just seems like all you're trying to do is, uh, because there's also it's almost like this intellectual combativeness where, well, I think you're wrong, so I'm just going to continue to hammer you on your points and but not really caring or understanding why you feel the way that you feel or think the way you think. And that can be very frustrating. I mean, it can shut down the group completely.
Right. Or hammer your points rather than actually state my own.
Yeah.
And the comment sections on YouTube and most of social media is in fact that.
Oh, I mean, people become anonymous on those, and they do not interact the same way that they would in person. I mean, at least in person, there's some level of decorum, but when you start looking at these other comments, I mean, just becomes disgusting at times. But the other thing too is that, I guess going back to the developing the relationships is because as you develop relationships with authenticity and allowing yourself to be, and I'll use the word vulnerable almost as a synonym for authenticity because you're putting what your true thoughts and true speech out there is you're allowing that other person into your life. But when you're playing devil's advocate just for the point of being devil's advocate, you're also putting up a wall that is keeping meaningfulness out of it because why is someone else gonna, because the next time that you come to seminar and you say, I don't like this section, you may think twice about putting it out there because you're going to be badgered by something that doesn't feel very genuine. It's just for the sake of argument, and yet that person hasn't put forth anything that they really are, that their thoughts are or their speech or mind is. And so if they're not allowing themselves to be vulnerable in it, why would you? It really breaks down the relationship, which then, it takes away from the seminar's experience that I think everyone is trying to have and why they signed up for. I mean, we're not, this is a labor of love. There is no prerequisite for having online great books beyond our own wants out of life.
Right. There are no grades and nobody's checking your work. You do it specifically, only for yourself. And so when they play a role, when someone plays a role, um, they're not getting from it what they should. And then the other people
Hmm.
are benefiting from what they have to offer. I don't want to get too bogged down necessarily on the sort of the devil's advocate, but that's one example of an inauthenticity. I think it takes several shapes. It could be, and it gets a little more subtle. It could be the person that never speaks.
Mm.
Uh, they don't speak because they have some sort of an anxiety or some sort of fear,
Hmm.
and that is real. And I would really like for that person to say, "Hey, I'm super nervous to even speak about this thing," and just leave it at that. They could just say that and leave it at that. Um, and then if we knew that, if they actually could frame those words and say those words,
Hmm.
then we would be able to either call on them or not call on them in a more
Hmm.
way. way, other than assuming why they weren't speaking.
Right.
Um, so the person that doesn't speak, the person that doesn't even attend, these people have some sort of
Hmm.
anxiety or some sort of fear oftentimes, and I think that needs to be said. I think they need to talk about that.
Oh yeah, and
Terrible catch-22, though, isn't it?
it is a little bit, yeah, and you know, there is obviously there's a seminar leader, although I think in a lot of ways that's a loose term because everyone is supposed to be equals among that group, but there is really something to be said about also just the person that is leading it to either offline or even in the seminar kind of create that space of I'll use the word safety where this person can feel like they can engage because um, there can be 101 reasons why this person is not speaking, and yet all the other attendees are simply in their mind making up their own reasons based on their own experiences of why that person isn't speaking. And but what do you find like when you've been in more seminars than I have, when someone doesn't speak, does it create like a certain dynamic or what happens?
Yeah, it does. There's one lady in one of our in seminars who doesn't speak very much,
Hmm.
and so when she does, everything stops. So and and I think that the reason she doesn't speak is just because she doesn't talk a lot. She's a quiet
Hmm.
person, doesn't talk a lot, and so when she does, everything stops because she doesn't just throw her words around,
Mm.
uh, and so I think when she doesn't speak, I think it's authentic. She doesn't really have anything to say at that time. She's listening carefully. She's thinking carefully. So that is good. But here's the thing: the person who is afraid to speak, when they speak up, often the same thing happens,
Yeah.
and everybody stops. And so they were already anxious, and now everything stops because, oh no, Jim finally said something, and so
And suddenly it goes quiet. My worst fear has become true.
right. And so, how do you deal with that? I mean, what is a tool that somebody like that could use to help, well, to have the outcome that they want? So that, and assuming one, that they do want to be able to speak more freely and with less anxiety.
Hmm.
Two, that when they do speak, it's accepted like they would hope it would be accepted.
Yeah, and that's I go back to then what you said originally of even that person saying that um I'm kind of nervous, that's why I'm not speaking. And then let's say they make their comment and don't quite get the response that they're looking for, then also stating that, well, this wasn't quite what I was expecting. I was hoping for more dialogue, and what was what does the silence mean? Or why the response that I got? And instead of making the assumption that, well, then what I said didn't matter or I shouldn't have spoken. It's again, it's taking that risk where you're willing to put out how you experience that silence and what it meant to you, and then for others to um, have their feedback so that that dialogue can be happen. Because the thing that I found so far, I've been in two seminars so far, is that everyone wants to be there. We all signed up there. We all signed up. We want to be part of this group, and people are they're what I found, a lot of them are genuine in wanting to understand what the other person means and understand where they're coming from. And so I think taking that risk, if you don't quite get the response that you're looking for, bringing the conversation to a certain extent in that direction of, well, what just happened there? I wasn't quite expecting that. And um what were you looking for? Here's what I was looking for, so that again, it breaks down those barriers where the group becomes more and more trusting of each other.
Yeah, when the person says, "That's not at all what I expect," what I expected," and it's not that you You wouldn't say that's not what I expect. Well, maybe you would if somebody countered your arguments
Mm-hmm.
with expected counter. I think that if you said, "Gosh, that's not at all what I expected," what ends up happening when you actually state what your real reaction to these things are, is you actually start. This is interesting. I'm gonna self declare this as profound.
Okay. Love it. Stamp it.
That's right. What you actually do at that point is start to bring reality into accord with your inner self.
Yeah.
Because if they don't know that you were surprised or taken aback by the response, then the way everyone else is functioning in the real world isn't jiving with what's going on inside your brain. So when we say those things, then everyone else gets a chance to act accordingly. And if you don't say it, they won't know. It'll
Nope.
be your secret. And they will not act in accord with what you think reality should be at that point. So you have to say it, no matter how scary. Have to.
I mean, so many, and actually, so in my daily life, I feel like so much of what I deal with my own clients is assumptions. It's history and perhaps something else that has some other experience that has informed their current one. And oftentimes when I'm sitting in the office, I offer a different perspective of so for example, well, my wife doesn't make my lunch, and she doesn't care about me. And I go back, I'm like, well, maybe it doesn't have to be that she doesn't care about you. Maybe it just has to be that that one time that she made you an olive loaf sandwich, you didn't like it, and that's what she's basing off. So she's never going to do it again. But maybe you should have that conversation with her. And we create these narratives in our mind of why the other person isn't doing something the way we want them to do, or didn't respond the way we want them to. And so often it's false because that's based on our own life experience. It's not based on, as you say, reality of why the other person is behaving the way that they are. And until you bring that up, you're going to live in your own narrative, and it's going to inform so much of your life that and you can miss out on so much because you're working off of a false narrative.
So I was in a men's group for a time. It's dissolved now. One of the guys in there would say, when somebody said something about the olive loaf sandwich or whatever, he would say, "Why don't you make up some more stories?"
I love
He
it.
would make you make up more stories.
Yeah.
And he's like, those could all be true too.
Yeah.
And then then a family friend of mine, I don't know, where are you, John?
I'm located in Connecticut.
Oh, you're in Connecticut. Well, I'm in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so, well, one of my family friends, he'd say, "When you assume, you make an ass of you and me." I don't know if they have that saying in Connecticut.
No, I haven't heard that one.
It's all spelled out in the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's Oklahoma stuff. Yeah. You have to say the thing so that one, you're not assuming what the other people will think about that. You just say it, and then they don't have to assume what you're thinking. So speaking up in the seminar is a big deal.
It is, and so along these lines of what I'm saying about what we're talking about with uh, just asking, and it's being genuinely curious. It's saying I don't understand, and I'm curious to understand you and understand how come you're saying what you're saying, so that I can understand your experience instead of trying to put my own narrative on it, because so often it's a lot safer to live in our own narrative. We don't have to deal with uncomfortable um
It seems like it anyway.
it seems like it, but you know what, uncomfortability is hard, but that's where the growth is, and that as a person. And same thing, and also in seminar, when we have a genuine curiosity and we want to understand, you're you're being respectful to the other person. You're building genuine relationships, and you're being authentic because you're saying that I don't understand and I want to.
Yeah. So this makes me think of a bigger problem, or maybe another one, a
Mhm.
level deep. What if they don't know what it is they want to say?
Yeah, meaning that they're they have some sort of internal experience, but they don't quite understand what it is. You mean?
Well, I think that's what's going on, but I think oftentimes people can. We could have a text in front of us. We can have Aristotle in front of us. And they certainly had an. If they actually read the thing, they had an experience of it.
Yeah.
So I just read Dante's Paradiso.
Hmm.
Um, I had an experience of it, which was utter confusion at all this word salad, revelatory experience, description stuff. And there have been many, many, many people brighter than I that have read that book and have taken something very important away from it. And I missed it.
Yeah.
And but I'm conscious that of the fact that I missed it at least. So there's a point where I think for a lot of people that come to counseling for the first time, to for the first time, they just don't even know what they would possibly say.
Oh, yeah.
So what would you say to that person?
In those situations, and I know seminar is different than what my daily job is, but so much of even like, let's say what my first session is, or a lot of what a session is I'll use the word goal setting. It's what are you trying to get out of this? And what are you trying to, it starts with acknowledging that you didn't understand and that, it takes a certain level of, vulnerability for you to be able to say, I didn't understand this. I'm supposed to, supposedly, but I don't. And so I need some more guidance on what am I supposed to take away from this. And so let's say in seminar, it's someone coming in there and saying, I read this, it was word salad. I don't understand it. Other people seem to know what this is supposed to mean, but I need some sort of direction or something to work off of because it's it's being in the middle of the ocean without a compass, and all you see is um, the horizon with no direction. And so I would say in those situations, other people that have some sort of understanding or some sort of opinion about it need to start to give some direction so that person can get their own thought process started and stimulated.
So again, if you're like, I read this thing, I've looked at myself, I don't
Hmm.
know what I need to say about this darn thing.
Yep.
That's probably the thing you need to say.
It is. And in those situations, what the person's also saying is, I'm hoping that someone else will pick up what I'm saying and give me some sort of direction.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that you're going to have a whole bunch of people that say, you're right.
Yeah.
Uh, you're right. It was word salad, or, um, in the time given with the text, it's none of us could get anything significant from it. Or, yeah, but I think that whatever it is that you're thinking, you're probably not the only one.
Oh, absolutely not. And even if it is, and so since you made that risk to say, I don't understand this great text that's in this canyon that is supposedly supposed to give me meaning out of it, and everyone else, or at least some other people say, you know what, I had the same experience, I didn't understand it. Well, guess what? That's the discussion then.
Right.
And then the discussion might be, well, why is this considered a great text when s- at least 30% of us haven't understood it? What does that mean? And our what does that even mean? Why is that happening? And but being able to at least say that, that fosters some good conversation.
Yeah, I think that, oftentimes that's the only thing that needs to be done.
Yeah,
Uh, all these things that we've talked about here just boil down to just saying what it is that you're experiencing.
I
I don't
agree.
have any, I read this book. I came to seminar. Thanks, guys, for showing up. But I got to be honest with you. I have nothing to say about this today.
and I'm gonna hear what everyone else says, and uh, I'll offer where I can, but I'm gonna be an observer here today,
Yeah.
and that's the best that I can offer. And then everyone in the group understands and can accept that. I mean, the seminar is will follow the rules of group dynamics, and there are very real group dynamics, and they go in stages. Um, and so, as you said, being open to say, I don't understand, or I need help, or that wasn't the reaction I was expecting, is part of what has to happen in the group for it to gain value and meaning out of the experience.
Yeah. We had, in my home group, we've been reading Dante now for months.
Okay. Oh, months. Oh boy.
And we read Purgatorio, the second, so Purgatory, the second book. And we showed up at the seminar to discuss the thing, and probably more than half of us hadn't read it, which rarely happens in this group. Everybody, we pretty compliant. Everybody typically does their work. And one of the guys in there, Jim, he says, "Listen, guys, I'm telling you, you need to read it. It's let's do it. Well, let's give it one more month. You guys." And we did, and sure enough, there was good to be had there. Um, but I'll tell you, I'm getting ready to go. We're going to have Thursday night. We're going to talk about this last book of it, and man, I just don't see me. I just don't see me reading it. It's too much.
So I have a question then. So you're experiencing this confusion where or for word salad just not getting meaning out of this section. Let's say this was when you first started this home group, like, I don't know, 2 years ago or however many years ago. Um, would you have the same vulnerability? Would you be able to say it the same way that you will today as you did when you first started? Because I'm making the assumption that as a group, you all have gained trust and evolved and come to a different understanding of each other and how what the group dynamics are. Has that evolved for you over time as far as how much you're willing to reveal?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm a I'm strange.
Okay.
I may be a little bit too much of an open book sometimes, but but the group has become tighter knit and
Yeah.
more transparent, and over time, all of these groups, when done well, take on the character of like almost an encounter group,
Hmm.
or um, so I have seen other people in this thing, and so to be fair, I had done like this men's group stuff and some other stuff like this actually before I started the book group. But over time, I have seen some of the people in the book or in the group open up, be more transparent, be more open to the text. So one of the things that I think that you have to be authentic. I think when you read text, you have to assume that it has something good to say. You can't go into it saying this is rubbish, or I'm studying the opposition. You can't do that either. You have to go into it assuming it has something honest to say.
Yeah.
And they all the people in my home group now do that. They go into it honestly, looking for the best Dante, and sometimes we still don't see it, and sometimes that's fair. Uh, and then we've seen a lot of people do a lot of mind changing. They've changed their minds about a lot
Yeah.
of foundational things as a result of doing this stuff together.
But and the group is also self-governing, and so when we're if someone is feeling that someone else is being devil's advocate or close to the to text, saying that it's rubbish to start off with. I mean, that's also something in a manner that is respectful, also bringing that point up that I'm not quite sure how helpful this is because, that can very easily shut down the group and they're not feeling that it's genuine or authentic. And when they're not feeling that it's genuine or authentic, that's also going to impact how all the other group members participate. And so even bringing that point up, so you're being authentic to yourself that I don't appreciate how this is happening in the group because I want a certain experience out of it too, of authenticity. And so there is a self-governance to it as well of keeping each other authentic.
Yeah, we had a young man that I invited to our home group
Hmm.
some time ago,
Yeah.
and he was unable to to be authentic, to say what
Yeah.
he thought.
Okay.
He had to either divert the conversation to something that he felt like he had some mastery over, some subject matter that he had better with, or play devil's advocate, or even something even crazier. And ultimately we disinvited him, because we could not have a productive group with him in it. Hard
Yeah.
call.
That is a very hard decision and it's unfortunate and but you know what though it's maybe that person can take a learning away from that if they wish to, or were able to hear the feedback of what they were doing. And, I mean, it comes down to insight too, is some people are trying to just through their own experiences, they have to emotionally protect themselves, which means everything has to be deflected. And you know what? I guess in those situations, if you find that that's happening over and over again, go talk to somebody that can help you work through that. And so then you can have these be participating in the full realm of life and the groups and but for the greater good of the group, you had to make that decision.
Which is fine.
Yeah, right.
I,
You're on your own journey.
I slept fine.
Yes, I'm sure. Which is good though.
Well, I could actually talk about this a very, very long time, but I think that gives people something to think about. And it's not just about seminar either, right? It's about talking to your boss, or even your subordinate, or your spouse, or whatever. Um, saying the thing that you need to say is very important. There's a book called Radical Honesty.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, what's that? Brad Blanton, is that his name?
I think so, yeah.
That I read some time ago, that was pretty darn important to me, and I recommend it. Uh, he teaches you to be honest, and also gives you some tools for being honest without being a jerk.
Yeah, and that's the important part. And you know what? And there are a few books out there like that, and they're wonderful because when you're not being authentic, you're also not drawing in people that are um want to be with you for who you are and accept you for who you are, and being honest is the only way to draw in the people that are willing to engage with you. So I'm so glad that you found a book that helped you like that and that you recommend it to others because it's really, all we have is in a lot of ways is our relationships with other people.
Yeah, and you can't have a relationship if you're not speaking honestly. You
Right.
can't.
Yeah.
Well, you can, but it's fraud. The whole thing's a fraud.
Right. And life becomes meaningless or you feel empty in a lot of ways.
So you're in our little Socratic crash course thing, and
Yes.
I really look forward here in a couple of weeks when we read the essay that compares Socrates' method of questioning with Freud's method of questioning. That's going to be a lot
Oh,
of fun to talk
that
with.
sounds like a lot of fun. Yes. I look forward to
Well,
reading that.
where can people find you?
So I can be found online at johnsyc.com. It's JOHNSYC.com. They can learn more about me, what I do. It's all authentic. It was all my writing, so you really get a good feel for who I am.
Good deal. Well, go get in a book group. It helps us not just with the sort of intellectual problems and grasping the great ideas and figuring out where you stand in the world of philosophy and thought, but it also helps you learn to express yourself and become more completely the kind of person that you are. And
Precisely.
it's so interesting to me, all of the different benefits that come from this, and it's not because it's a great book seminar. Really, it's not like that's some sort of magical formula. It's that people join together for a common purpose, and then we pursue that with some integrity. And when you do that, interesting things happen. And this is one of the interesting things that come out of that.
It is. It's absolutely the experience of online great books. And one of the, beyond my own desire to read the books, I also joined because of what I do as a therapist. I wanted to participate in the seminars, read the books so that I could be more available to my own clients. And it provides that. And as you're going through the whole experience, it provides so much more than just understanding the text. It really, if you open yourself up to it can really have a lot of uh, technical type of effects in your life.
Well, if anyone is in the Connecticut area needs some go to John Syc, JOHNSYC.com and go check him out and start a great book group at home. If you can't get a group at home started, you can go check us out at onlinegreatbooks.com and click on the top right hand corner at Join Now. And if enrollment is open, you can join. And if it's not, join the little VIP waiting list. You'll get our newsletter and other materials that'll help you maybe start your own group or know more about what we do. And you can always use the discount code OGB Podcast to get 25% off when you join us. Thanks so much for listening.